Your shadow is blocking your wealth. What if I told you that there is an invisible force within you that is actively sabotaging every attempt you make to build real wealth? A force so powerful that it can destroy years of hard work in a matter of seconds, but when finally mastered, becomes the most potent catalyst for financial abundance you have ever experienced. Carl Jung discovered over a century ago that 95% of people live in psychological patterns that ensure they never escape financial mediocrity. No matter how many courses they take, how many books they read, how many investment strategies they learn, they are fighting a part of themselves that they don't even know exists. While you are consciously working to create wealth, your shadow is subconsciously working to sabotage it. And the most devastating part? The more you try to force financial success without dealing with this dark force, the stronger it becomes. This is why smart, hardworking, dedicated people can go decades without ever achieving the financial freedom they desperately desire. The answer is not to work harder. It's about confronting and integrating the most rejected aspects of your psyche that are controlling your relationship with money. Over the past 12 years, I've meticulously studied the psychology of people who have built extraordinary wealth from scratch. I'm not talking about heirs or lottery winners. I'm talking about individuals who started with nothing and built 8, 9, and even 10-figure fortunes through sheer psychological power and willpower. And I've discovered something that will shock you. Every single one of them, without exception, went through a process that Carl Jung called shadow integration related to money. They confronted and transformed the fears, limiting beliefs and destructive patterns that most people unconsciously carry around about wealth, power, and financial success. But here's what really struck me. They didn't do it through positive affirmations, visualizations, or any of the manifestation techniques you see sold out there. They did it by diving into the darkest, most uncomfortable, and most rejected aspects of their relationship with money. Elon Musk didn't build his $200 billion fortune by trying to be a spiritually evolved person who doesn't care about money. He consciously integrated his relentless ambition, his thirst for power, and yes, his natural greed, and channeled those energies into creating revolutionary companies. Jeff Bezos didn't become the richest man in the world by meditating on abundance. He fully embraced his competitive impulses, his obsessive need for market dominance, and his willingness to be absolutely ruthless in business. Oprah Winfrey didn't build a billion-dollar media empire by denying her hunger for recognition and influence. She turned that hunger into fuel to create content that impacts millions of lives. What all of these financial giants have in common is that they are unafraid of their own impulses related to money and power. They don't suppress their greed, their ambition, or their thirst for domination. They consciously integrate them and use them as tools to create massive value in the world. Meanwhile, the average person is waging an internal psychological war against these very impulses. They have been taught that greed is evil, that ambition is selfish, that wanting lots of money is spiritually inferior. And because of this internal war, your shadow is constantly sabotaging your conscious efforts to create wealth. Your conscious mind says, "I want to be rich," but your shadow whispers, "Rich people are evil. I don't deserve abundance. Money corrupts." And guess which force usually wins? The shadow always wins because it operates below the level of conscious awareness, influencing your decisions, your actions, and your results in ways you don't even realize. That's why you can have all the right financial strategies, all the technical knowledge you need, all the motivation in the world, and yet still remain stuck in patterns of financial scarcity and limitation. Stay until the end because I'm going to show you exactly how to identify and transform the shadow patterns that are blocking your wealth. I'm going to give you the specific tools that Carl Jung developed to integrate these rejected aspects of your psyche, and how to use that integration to catapult your financial success to levels you never imagined possible. If this resonates with you, hit the like button now because this information goes against everything you've ever been taught about money and spirituality. To understand how your shadow is blocking your wealth, we must first understand what Jung discovered about the dual nature of the human psyche. In 1912, Jung was working with extremely wealthy patients in Zurich, people who had all the money in the world but lived in profound psychological poverty, and he made a revolutionary discovery. The problem was not that they had too much money. The problem was that they had never consciously integrated their relationship to money. They had built wealth through aspects of their personality that they secretly despised in themselves. This created what Jung called a psychic dissociation, an internal split between who they were consciously and who they were subconsciously. And this internal split was the source of all their suffering. But Jung also discovered the opposite. People remained poor not because they lacked opportunity or ability, but because they had completely rejected the aspects of their personality that were necessary to create wealth. They had been conditioned to view ambition, competitiveness, and the desire for money as morally inferior traits. So whenever these natural impulses emerged, they immediately repressed them. The result? A life of virtuous poverty that was, in reality, a form of psychological self-sabotage. Jung realized that a healthy relationship with money comes not from denial or obsession, but from conscious integration. It's about recognizing that you have natural impulses related to money, power, and status, and learning to channel them in productive and constructive ways. But here's where it gets tricky. Modern society has created an epidemic of ambivalence about wealth. On the one hand, we are bombarded with messages that money is important, that we need to work hard to be financially successful. On the other hand, we are constantly exposed to messages that rich people are greedy, selfish, that money doesn't bring happiness, that focusing on material wealth is spiritually inferior. This cultural contradiction creates what Jung called a psychological complex around money. A complex is a set of emotionally charged ideas, emotions, and behaviors that operate autonomously in the unconscious, influencing our actions even when we don't realize it. Most people develop a money complex that contains elements such as shame for wanting to be rich, fear of being judged if they achieve wealth, guilt for having more than others, belief that they do not deserve abundance, terror of losing money once they have it, compulsive need to prove that they are not materialistic. These elements operate as subconscious programs that actively sabotage any conscious attempt to create sustainable wealth. It is like trying to drive a car with the handbrake on. You can step on the gas, but you will never get anywhere. Now let me give you specific examples of how this works in practice. Imagine a person who grew up in a family where money was constantly associated with stress, fighting, and problems. The parents fought about money, there was constant financial tension, and the child internalized the belief that money causes problems. Even if this person consciously wants to be rich, his shadow will sabotage any real financial success, because subconsciously he believes that money causes problems, causes pain. So, every time he starts to earn more money, something unexpected happens. A medical emergency, a car problem, a disastrous investment decision. The shadow is working to protect you from the pain you subconsciously associate with having money. Or consider someone who was raised with religious or spiritual messages about money being the root of all evil. Consciously, this person may reject these beliefs and want to build wealth, but their shadow carries a deep-seated shame about material ambition. So every time they begin to experience financial success, they subconsciously sabotage themselves through excessive generosity, altruistic financial decisions that are actually destructive, or a compulsive need to prove that they are not materialistic. Jung discovered that these patterns can only be healed through what he called conscious confrontation with the shadow, not through superficial mental reprogramming or positive affirmations, but through a deep process of recognizing, accepting, and integrating the rejected aspects of our relationship with money and power. And here's the most important part. Integrating your financial shadow does not mean becoming a greedy or materialistic person. It means stopping fighting natural impulses and learning to channel them constructively. It means developing a mature, balanced, and powerful relationship with money as a tool for creating value and impact in the world. Now I'm going to show you exactly how your shadow is blocking your wealth and what you can do to change it. The first manifestation of the financial shadow is what Jung called unconscious self-sabotage. You work hard, create opportunities, start to experience success, and then something mysterious happens. You make a seemingly irrational decision that destroys your progress. You procrastinate on an important opportunity. You engage in unnecessary conflict that ruins a business deal. You spend impulsively and destroy your financial security. The conscious mind can't explain these behaviors because they come from the shadow, operating below the level of awareness. The shadow has its own intentions, its own fears, its own protection systems. And one of the shadow's most common protection systems is to keep you from becoming very successful, because it associates financial success with some kind of danger. It could be the danger of being rejected by friends and family, the danger of becoming a bad person, the danger of attracting unwanted attention, or the danger of taking on more responsibility than you feel capable of handling. To break this pattern, you need to do what Jung called A financial shadow analysis. Sit down in a quiet place and ask yourself the following questions, paying attention not just to the logical answers but to the emotions and images that emerge spontaneously. First question, what traits do I most despise in wealthy people? Be brutally honest. Maybe it's arrogance, selfishness, insensitivity, superficiality, greed. Now here's the crucial part. Every trait you despise in wealthy people is an aspect of your own shadow that you are rejecting. If you hate arrogance in wealthy people, there is an arrogant part of you that has been repressed. If you despise selfishness in millionaires, there is a selfish part of you that is not being expressed in a healthy way. Jung found that we always project our rejected shadow onto others, and as long as you are rejecting these aspects in yourself, you will subconsciously avoid becoming rich so that you don't become the kind of person you despise. Second question, what messages did I receive about money as a child? Not just the direct messages, but the implicit messages. How did your parents behave around money? How did they talk about rich people? What emotions were associated with financial discussions in your home? These primary messages created what Jung called shadow programming around money, and this programming is constantly operating, influencing your decisions and behaviors in ways that you may not even realize. Third question, what do I fear will happen if I actually become rich? Again, pay attention not just to the logical thoughts, but to the irrational, primitive fears that surface. You may fear that you will become a different person, that you will lose your humility, that you will be rejected by people you love, that you will not be able to handle responsibility, that you will attract dangerous attention. These unconscious fears are the invisible chains that keep you stuck in patterns of financial limitation. The second manifestation of the financial shadow is what Jung called compensatory inversion. This happens when you develop exaggerated traits on the opposite side of the financial spectrum to compensate for repressed aspects. For example, if you have completely repressed your natural greed, you may develop a compulsive generosity that is actually destructive. You give money you can't afford, lend to people who won't pay you back, invest in noble causes that drain your resources. Your conscious mind sees this as virtue, but it's actually your shadow expressing greed in reverse. You're greedy for approval, recognition, and feelings of moral superiority. Or if you have completely repressed your ambition, you may develop an exaggerated humility that is actually a form of disguised laziness. You refuse to promote yourself at work. You don't ask for the raises you deserve. You don't pursue opportunities because it would be too greedy. Jung taught that these compensatory inversions are just as problematic as the direct expression of the repressed aspects. The solution is not to repress or exaggerate, but to consciously integrate. The third manifestation is what Jung called financial projection. You attribute the power to other people or external circumstances to determine your financial situation. The government is conspiring against the common people. The rich control everything and don't let others get ahead. I don't have the right connections. The system is rigged. While there may be elements of truth in these statements, when you use them as your primary explanation for your financial situation, you are projecting your own shadow of powerlessness and victimhood. Jung found that projection is always a sign of unintegrated aspects of the psyche. The person who constantly blames external forces for their financial situation is avoiding confronting the aspects of themselves that have real power to create change. To integrate this projection, you need to ask a tough question. How am I contributing to my own financial limitation? Not in a way of self-attack or blame, but in a way of genuine empowerment. What decisions are you making? What opportunities are you avoiding? What patterns are you repeating? When you stop projecting responsibility outward and take real power over your situation, something extraordinary happens. You stop being a victim of circumstances and become a creator of your financial reality. The fourth manifestation is what Jung called the financial inferiority complex. Even though you have skills, knowledge, and opportunities, you feel fundamentally unqualified to have real wealth. You can work hard and have some success, but there is always an invisible ceiling that you cannot break through. This complex often comes from internalized social class messages during childhood. If you grew up in a working class family, you may have internalized beliefs about your place in the economic hierarchy. People like us don't get rich. We are honest and hardworking, not like these rich people. Real wealth is not for normal people like us. Jung taught that these complexes can only be healed through what he called identity expansion. You need to consciously develop a new vision of yourself as someone who is worthy of and capable of creating significant wealth. But this cannot be done through affirmations or visualizations alone. It requires consistent action that gradually challenges self-imposed limitations. Start with small acts of rich behavior. If you never eat at expensive restaurants, occasionally do so and notice your internal reactions. If you always buy the cheapest option, occasionally choose the higher quality option and notice how that makes you feel. If you avoid environments where wealthy people congregate, deliberately put yourself in those situations and notice your projections and judgments. Each of these seemingly small acts is expanding your psychological comfort zone around wealth. It is desensitizing your shadow to the concept of you having and deserving abundance. The fifth and most powerful manifestation is what Jung called energetic sabotage. Your shadow not only blocks specific actions but drains your life energy in subtle but devastating ways. You may have all the motivation in the world on Monday morning, but by Wednesday you are exhausted, unmotivated, and questioning whether it is worth it. This is because you are fighting your own shadow. Part of you wants financial success, but another part of you is actively resisting it. This internal war consumes enormous amounts of psychological energy. To resolve it, you need to do what Jung called negotiation with the shadow. Instead of trying to force your shadow to cooperate, you consciously negotiate with it. Now we come to the revelation that will completely change your relationship with money and wealth. And here's the truth that the personal development industry doesn't want you to know. Your shadow is not your enemy. It is your greatest potential ally in creating extraordinary wealth. The problem is not that you have shadow aspects related to money. The problem is that you are trying to create wealth while rejecting the very aspects of your personality that are necessary for real financial success. Jung discovered something revolutionary. The most financially successful people are not those who have eliminated their negative impulses related to money. They are those who have consciously integrated those impulses and transformed them into powerful tools for creating value in the world. Your greed, when consciously integrated, becomes the fuel for a relentless ambition that creates innovative solutions to real problems. Your competitiveness, when accepted and channeled, becomes the driving force that pushes you to levels of excellence that your competitors can't even dream of achieving. Your desire for power, when maturely embraced, becomes magnetic leadership that inspires others and creates movements that change entire industries. Your selfishness, when consciously integrated, becomes powerful self-care and healthy boundaries that protect your energy and resources so you can create maximum impact. What separates billionaires from the average person is not the absence of these drives. It's the conscious and productive integration of them. Warren Buffett doesn't deny his greed. He channels it into an obsessive understanding of markets that creates value for millions of investors. Elon Musk doesn't suppress his need for domination. He uses it to revolutionize entire industries and accelerate human progress. Oprah Winfrey doesn't hide her hunger for influence. She turns it into a platform that empowers and educates millions of people. The crucial difference is that they aren't at war with these aspects of themselves. They've embraced them, refined them, and harnessed them for extraordinary results. And here's the amazing part. When you stop fighting your financial shadow and start working with it, something magical happens. You gain access to reserves of energy, creativity, and determination you never knew existed. You stop wasting psychological energy on self-sabotage and internal conflict, and all that energy becomes available to create real wealth. You develop what Jung called an authentic magnetic personality. Instead of trying to project an image of a good person who doesn't care much about money, you become someone who fully embraces your humanity, including your desires for material abundance, and uses those desires as fuel to create extraordinary value. And authentic personality is magnetism. People are naturally drawn to individuals who are fully comfortable with themselves, who are not hiding or denying aspects of their nature. This magnetism translates directly into financial opportunities, profitable partnerships, and a natural ability to influence and lead others. But here's the deeper revelation. When you integrate your financial shadow, you don't become a bad or greedy person. You become a whole, balanced person who can pursue material wealth without guilt, shame, or internal conflict. And paradoxically, this integration often leads to more ethical and generous behavior than repression. Why? Because you are no longer acting out of neurotic compensation. The person who completely represses his or her greed often acts in secretly selfish ways while maintaining a facade of altruism. The person who completely denies his or her ambition often sabotages others in passive-aggressive ways. The person who completely rejects his or her desire for power often manipulates in indirect and destructive ways. When these impulses are conscious and integrated, they can be directed in constructive and productive ways. Integrated greed becomes healthy ambition that creates value for all. Integrated competitiveness becomes excellence that raises standards for an entire industry. Integrated desire for power becomes leadership that inspires and empowers others. Jung called this transcendence through inclusion. Rather than trying to transcend your human nature by denying lesser aspects, you transcend by including and integrating all aspects of who you are. And it is this total integration, this radical authenticity, that creates the kind of magnetic presence and personal power that attracts wealth naturally and sustainably. Furthermore, when you integrate your financial shadow, you develop what Jung called the courage of the economic hero. You are no longer afraid to pursue big, risky opportunities. You are no longer afraid to negotiate aggressively. You are no longer afraid to charge what you are worth. You are no longer afraid to compete at higher levels. Why? Because you have faced and integrated the most frightening aspects of yourself related to money and power. What can the external world do that is more challenging than confronting your own inner shadows? This is the real difference between people who create extraordinary wealth and people who remain stuck in financial limitation. It is not intelligence. It is not hard work. It is not luck or connections. It is the level of psychological integration that allows access to the full spectrum of personal power necessary to create value and wealth on a massive scale. If you've made it this far, it means that something deep inside you recognizes the truth of what we've been discussing. It means that you're tired of fighting yourself in the pursuit of financial success. It means that you're ready to stop being a victim of your own shadow and start using your shadow as the most powerful wealth-creating tool you have. But let me be completely straightforward with you. What I've just shared is just the beginning. Financial shadow integration is a deep, systematic process that requires specific techniques and careful guidance. It's not something you can master by watching a 50-minute video. If you're serious about transforming your relationship with money through shadow integration, if you want access to the specific techniques Jung developed for working with financial complexes, please like this video and comment "wealth" to show me that you're ready to go deeper on this journey. And here's something that will shock you. I'm preparing an exclusive content about the specific financial shadow dialogue techniques that Jung used with his wealthiest patients. I'm going to show you exactly how to identify your specific money complexes, how to consciously negotiate with your shadow, and how to transform self-sabotage into self-commitment. But this material won't be available to everyone, and it definitely won't be available for long. If you want to be notified when this advanced content is ready, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because I'll release it first to subscribers who have demonstrated a real commitment to this transformation. And if you know someone who is struggling financially despite being talented and working hard, someone who seems to be sabotaging their own success in ways they don't even understand, share this video. Financial shadow work isn't for everyone. It requires courage to confront aspects of yourself that you may have spent your entire life avoiding. It requires brutal honesty about your own destructive patterns. It requires a willingness to embrace aspects of your humanity that society labels as negative or spiritually inferior. But for those who are ready, it's the most direct path to breaking patterns of financial limitation and accessing your true wealth-creating potential. Comment exposure if you want to see this revelation that can completely change your approach to financial growth. Remember, your shadow is not blocking your wealth to hurt you. It is protecting you from something you subconsciously fear about having money. But when you consciously integrate those fears and transform them into power, when you stop fighting your human nature and start working with it, you become an unstoppable force of value creation and abundance. Your shadow was blocking your wealth. Now it will become your greatest asset to create the financial life you have always dreamed of. See you in the next video.